So oftentimes when I'm teaching people, I'm always saying, it depends, it depends, it depends. The best way to think about that is probably your time to shine as a bread baker is in that final 10% of something. You'll probably notice some slight differences in the bake on this oven versus the oven in Mesa. We still get a really nice bake on this oven, but the oven in Mesa bakes a little bit more forgivingly. We can start by just unloading these. If you want to basically go 2 to a board here, and then 2 behind. Then we'll rice flour all of the tops for some contrast. So I'll let you do your side. All right, you want to score one of the ornamental scores? Let's see what you picked up yesterday.
Sure, yeah. What's the, which one's this from the country?
Yeah.
So it's just the 7 and the...
Yep.
Sweet.
I'd say it's pretty good for a newbie. The bread's a little soft, so it makes it a little challenging to score. I go backwards versus you. Worth giving it a try to see what you prefer. Okay. So you were kind of pulling the blade closer to you, whereas I push out away. I find it to be more free, whereas here you're kind of going into your body. So you can get a little bit more detail this way, but amongst our crew, I would say at least 50% of people are scoring that way. And for whatever reason, when people first start learning to score, they find it more comfortable that way. So
Definitely try it.
yeah, try it the other way, see what you think. And let's just go through all of these. So for those of you watching, we're just going to be baking some bread this morning and having a conversation. Levi joins us today from Florida, where he's been watching us on our YouTube channel since the early days of the garage. And actually, he showed up in a job application for one of the jobs that we have. We invited him to give a couple days a try here. He was planning on a trip out here, so we invited him to the bakery. And this is his second day with us. Yesterday he was joining us at our Mesa bakery. What's it like for you being on camera? Is it nerve-wracking?
I think a little bit just because I'm not familiar with the product, but I'm just happy to be able to be here. And it's interesting to be on this side since I have been watching for so many years.
So one bit of feedback is try to push this over a little bit.
Okay.
I'd probably put that line there normally, but otherwise pretty good. Recently, I did a segment that will be on our next season of $1 Million Baker, which is this like online course we built for people trying to build businesses out of bread making. And I did like ambient bread, start to finish. And it's very challenging when the bread gets soft. Requires a sharp blade, a level of confidence in your scoring, which is impossible on the first day or second day that you're scoring bread. So I'll show you how to load these. Basically just push all the way in, and then as you get them in the right spot, you just basically slide them out. You want to try one? Just keep it in the middle. Nice. I'll have you try this side one too. This one, just be careful when you pull your board back out. This lip can catch you and you can end up like kind of bumping into a bunch of other stuff. Nice. All right, good job. So close the door. We'll hit the steam button. Should hear that steam always audibly. And then there's some baking parameters that you can follow. So we have 7 seconds of steam, which is what you did. The first phase of the bake is 18 minutes, and that's with the vent closed. And we're ready to load this bread that actually Sarah had scored for us. So we'll load it in here just the same. Just move it around as you load it, but go ahead and try to load the whole oven. Awesome.
Vents closed.
Close it, yep. Spins closed, 7 seconds, yep. Hear the steam and set the timer. All right,
cool.
We now need to get more bread from the back. So it looks like this one's done. One thing to sort of keep in mind around here, always pull old labels off and try to always return objects you're not using because space is precious. This is the market bake, so she's going to be baking this later today for slicing. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and grab this. A little more practice. These should be a little easier to score. While we do this, I'm curious to hear more of your story. How did you discover proof?
So I'm originally from Kansas City, Missouri. I was really interested in sourdough bread before I went to pastry school, and there's a bakery called Ibis Bakery in Kansas City, Missouri that I was always interested in and went to a lot. I ended up going to baking and pastry school, and in 2020 in my sourdough bread class, I had to research an up-and-coming sourdough baker, and that's how I found y'all. I was in Kentucky at the time when I found you guys, but
so we were the subject of a class project?
Yeah. I still have the project too. I'll have to share with you. But I just had to research an up-and-coming sourdough bread baker, and I did a project on you guys and your story, and that was right at the time you were transitioning into Mesa. And found the YouTube, found your story to be so compelling and so interesting, and genuinely I've been on the email list and following the socials since 2020.
Wow.
I've loved this side of the US. I've wanted to move out this way for a while, and knew that after, I work in French pastry right now over in Florida, but I knew that I wanted to learn this side of the industry and really learn this craft, and I can tell you guys care. I love how dedicated you are to the craft and dedicated you are to sourcing locally and everything like that too.
So I'm curious, given that you've been following all along and probably have seen a lot of our content from the outside,
Yes.
now you have spent a day in one of our bakeries and you're starting another day in another one of our bakeries. How would you compare and contrast your perception of us having just seen all the content versus actually being here on this side of things?
Authentic.
Okay.
Truly, in a good way. No, like it's been exactly kind of what I've seen. I think it's cool you guys are willing to share all the knowledge you have. You've shared, like I remember through the years, I remember you were sharing all the ups and downs of all the problems you're running into along with the successes of building out Mesa. So it's just really cool, the authenticity that you guys are sharing with the camera is very cool.
I don't really often feel like I'm doing marketing when we do these videos. Of course, I guess I am, but it's mostly just always been sharing whatever's going on in the bakery. When I was interviewing you, you're saying that currently in your job in French pastry, you get to like spend a lot of time on things, and I think you're working for a pretty wealthy company that can afford you kind of the luxuries of that type of time or intent behind something as precise as pastry. What is it about this kind of more gritty, down-to-earth product that appeals to you?
I was just having this conversation with Dave earlier this morning, one of the mixers in the back. I told him how it's funny because I'm willing to trade in my set of tweezers for my hands full of flour. I said, like the work I do right now is definitely an art form of its own kind, but I definitely find this to be an art form of its own kind. The whole world and wealth of knowledge that I feel like I can learn here in sourdough bread, but also here through your bakery. I'm not familiar with sourdough bread or the processes very much, and I knew it's a skill I wanted to add to my repertoire for years. And so as soon as I knew I was finished with learning as much as I wanted to right now in fine pastry, I knew it was sourdough that I wanted to learn next.
The scoring part is about as close as we get to tweezers as there is on the bread side, that is. We're fully loaded now, and we have to make some decisions because we're moving pretty fast working together. I'd say, one, we can take a little bit of time. I'll give you some feedback on your scoring. But we can start loading up this rack a little bit ahead of time. Just have to watch how much time is left on this bake. So we've got about 16 minutes left on this bake at the moment. If we score now, that bread is probably going to be out for roughly 10 minutes. It's fine. But if it was really warm in here, you might start to make different decisions. You'd have to like really judge the dough. It's not too far along. It's not like so proofy that I would be worried about it. No real issue hanging out on the rack for 16 minutes. But there are other days where the bread's a little further along and you might be a little bit more careful, put it that way. So we can go ahead and proceed with caution. We'll just take a little bit more time on these.
Because after the first bake with the steam, they get a second bake, correct?
We release the steam, yeah,
Okay.
and that's when the crust is developed at that last stage. So what I'm hoping you can do on this round of scoring is tighten up the distance between your lines, and go a little bit further across the loaf, top to bottom. One thing you can do is use the lines of the bread as your guide, like always be finishing and starting at the same point. For me, one of the things that's easier about pulling away is I'm always starting in that middle. So if I use that as my line, I can always trace that line down the loaf. Once you practice this over and over, I've never seen somebody do the way you were doing kind of and get much faster, but the people that do the pull away variety, if you want to like watch down here for a second, you can see me just cruise through this. It just kind of becomes second nature, and you can really get through a lot of bread in a very fast amount of time. So hit the timer button, open up the door, and open the damper at the end. I think this is like a loading issue. This one just kind of got stuck here. You notice that it kind of snagged. Other than that, everything looks fine. This bread was the sticky bread, and if it sticks to the stone, it will burn. So there's some things we can do to mitigate. Releasing it from the stone helps. But then another sort of trick on this oven, this oven shows you the top temperature and it shows you the deck temp, the stone temp. Notice how this is set for 410, but the actual temp is 404 and it's heating. Well, what we found on this oven is that towards the end of the bake, especially that last 10 minutes, if this oven is cold on the stone and it's actively heating the bottom deck, the bottom stone, it will often burn the bottom. So I can just kill the bottom heat. So yeah, because the stone really retains its heat really well. So let's go ahead and give this oven a check. So release open it up. Good. No real problems that I see that bring to light. You can start to see some of the differences in the various scoring. Like this one is one where the score was way to the right, and notice it's just a little less tall.
I see.
So that's kind of the benefit of centering.
How did you tell on that first one that was a little stuck? How that loaf was a little stuck and you had to release it? How did you know? How could you tell?
So I could tell based on this one, okay. That gave me sort of suspicion that others might be stuck.
Okay.
I've got 9 minutes before any loaves need to be unloaded. I'm going to show Sophia around really quickly and give you the brave task of watching over this for 9 minutes. Come get me if I take longer than anticipated. You're going to have to release these steams just like we did. So, yeah. Any questions? No. All right. Good luck. This one is doing that heating thing on the top, but not on the bottom, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay. This one is heating on the bottom, though, so we'll probably do the same thing. I'll just kill that now proactively. With a crust there. You can. Yeah, this used to be a bad. Okay, I'd push these just a tad longer. They're getting close. Notice, do you see the bottoms? Yeah. So had we not killed that, they'd be worse. We can go another 2 minutes. And then you can get 3 new boards from down there, and we can... Oh, it looks like we need to get more bread, huh? I should have done that. These are ready to pull. So I'd pull from the left side first. I'll do one, and I'll show you how to do this. Looks like all the country's here. This bread looked weird to me. It's like, why does this bread look so different from the country? Pretty confident we're baking Coruscant here in the top, and we scored it as sourdough. So we just have to call that out with these guys. It shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, maybe somebody will notice a different design, but it's certainly still Coruscant bread. It's a wildly different recipe, so the two breads are not really similar. This one is made with a porridge. It's far moister, and it's actually, why did this one stick to the bottom and the other one didn't? Why is this one softer? All the signs show this was Coruscant. We just missed it. I missed it. You have no responsibility here. But I'll let Jay know, and I don't think he's gonna have any trouble selling because he's good at that. So you have a deck of Coruscant that looks a whole lot like country. I'm gonna put it with your Coruscant, and that's the only way you'll know. We had to bake this one substantially longer. It's a more hydrated bread, so you can see like the result was slightly different for a much longer bake. I mean, I think 5, 6, 7 minutes longer in this bake. There's a lot more moisture in this loaf. Because again, we make Coruscant porridge, and then we incorporate it into a straight dough. So porridge typically has 2 to 1 water to grain, whereas typically it's the inverse when you're making a regular dough. There's way more grain than there is water. So the porridge traps a lot more moisture, and that has an effect on the softness. So later on you might be shaping Coruscant, you'll notice it's a lot stickier to work with than when you're shaping country. For scoring, the wetter the dough, just the more challenging the scoring is. So for instance, like a ciabatta, which is super, super wet, we couldn't really score it the way that we score our loaves. Typically, you barely score ciabatta. So I guess the answer to your question is the wetter the loaf, the less scoring is relevant. And that holds true down to like loaves that are more like batters. Like rye is more of a batter than a dough. No scoring in rye. And then we can take a closer look at these. I think we could push these a little bit longer, maybe give them a quick rotate. But we'll pull this side out. It's nice looking countries. Doesn't really convey as much shine on the loaves as our Mesa oven naturally. That's kind of what I meant by it's a little less forgiving. One of the troublesome parts of scaling a bakery is everything is begging to be standardized some more so that new people can learn more easily. But nothing's that standard about baking. Like the last 10% really requires a lot of discretion. So So oftentimes when I'm teaching people, I'm always saying, it depends, it depends, it depends. But the best way to think about that is probably your time to shine as a bread baker is in that final 10% of something. Whether it be the final 10% discretion at a mix to know, okay, this is truly well-developed dough, or that final 10% of the bake, okay, this is truly the color that I'm desiring. Because a lot of the process is passive and you have less control over it. So notice these are lighter. I'll just throw them on the hotter side of the oven and spread them out and give them 2 more minutes. It's not a dramatic difference between some of the ones you did and the ones I did. I do like the look of the more dense, like more lines, but I mean, to the customer's eye, you can see the benefit of the rice flour though, where you have this nice contrast of the eyeliner, you have this color, it's pretty defined, versus this one, that's really the only thing you can really nitpick there, I guess. How many loaves of bread? Oh, actually, I can give you a proper estimate. Since working with Michael, he's uploaded a lot of that data. I mean, I can't tell you how many I personally did in the number, but I can easily tell you how many we've baked overall as a company. Total loaves baked of all varieties?
Yeah, we're in this past year.
All right, let's see what I can come up with here. See how good Michael's numbers are. Okay, this is a little bit, isn't just bread. It's gonna include pastry, but I could probably break it down for you if I had a little more time. To date, we've baked and sold 1,879,322 items between the bread and the pastry in the last 2,765 days since we started.
Over 1 million, that's a lot of food. It's a lot of bread, it's a lot of pastry.
It's easiest to score your loaves when they're cold. We eat with our eyes first.
You have to understand your audience enough to be able to say, like, I'm gonna be charging a lot of money for my super crazy cool thing, or it's so cool and so creative that only you can do it, and then you don't stand a chance of scaling it.
Let's go over what it's like to build a bakery from one person to many.